The Story of Me is brought to you by Liuna, Ontario Provincial District Council. Liuna, feel the power. Greetings. At an early age, our guest already had an appreciation for the beauty and complexity of the human race. No wonder that as an adult, she would be instrumental in making life better for people of all races and origins. Today, we welcome Fernanda Gaspar.
Olá.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in so long.
Well, I'm the same and you are the same.
Yeah, you went to
It's great.
Ottawa from Toronto. And why did you go to Ottawa? Did we say anything that offended you in Toronto?
Well, I had many years in Toronto, a very intense life, and I was looking forward to a smaller city, calmer, cheaper,
Yeah.
different style of life.
And still
And
is, right?
Ottawa is a great city, smaller,
Yeah.
but with all sorts of cultural outlets,
Yeah.
the north and the wilderness. So it was a good choice. I'm happy
Very
about
good.
it.
It's good to see you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You were born in Queluz, a
Right.
town outside of Lisbon. Not a big town.
No, it's not.
Now, Queluz is the Versailles of Portugal, and with a royal palace, a very historical town, no?
Just the palace. It's like two worlds, the palace and then the town.
Oh, yeah?
The town basically was, and perhaps even today, a suburb, a dormitory for Lisbon.
Yeah,
So rather modest,
yeah,
small buildings and nothing special. And then the palace,
yeah. A big
That-
contrast.
a big contrast.
Were you
Yes.
aware of this contrast
I
early in
was.
life?
Yeah, you couldn't miss it.
Yeah,
You couldn't miss the humbleness of everybody and everything.
yeah,
And then that world apart. And I went to school in the palace.
yes,
It was a large complex with many buildings.
Yeah.
In primary class, I was there for all those years, 40 years
Yeah.
or so. So I went there every day, of course. And yes, it was like two separate worlds.
Worlds.
I
Yeah.
liked both, but they were very different.
From your biography, your parents, both of your parents, left home at the tender age of 14 to
14,
work.
yeah.
Was this
It was
unusual
usual
practice?
to do that, yeah. Families, my mother came from peasant family. My father from, not sure, never knew his family. But anyway, yeah, it was customary with families 4, 5, 6, 10 kids.
Yeah,
And no income, or very little income, to place them as soon as possible.
yeah.
And they were people who were well off, who needed servants. So these kids would go and serve a family somewhere,
So
and
there
that's
were
what
jobs
happened.
for young people like that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's how.
Now, I wanted to know a little bit about your early experiences. Let's say you're 4, 5 years old. What were your main interests then?
I don't quite remember much, and at that age, I can hardly remember of
Yeah.
that. But when I start remembering school, and at my father's grocery store,
Yes.
there were, for instance, these newspapers, magazines that he bought from clients
Yes.
for,
Yeah.
a few pennies or a few escudos to wrap stuff. At that time, 1 kilo, 1 pound of this and that, and they would wrap up in those.
In the old
Anyway, so there was
newspapers.
this pile of magazines in newspapers, and I started reading very early from those papers.
Yeah.
That I remember very well. I was attracted to them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
My father almost encouraged. He found it funny that I would like them. And I picked up the letters. They helped me. And so I remember that. And that was early, maybe 5, 6 or so. And then went on. I started going to school, reading, and I would always go back to those magazines and
Yeah.
newspapers
Yeah.
for the pictures.
Your
for the
father was not
news.
educated, but you told me when we
Eh,
spoke in preparation for this
Yeah.
interview that he wrote well. And
Yes,
your mom was also a great storyteller.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My father wasn't educated, but he did have the first degree, the 4th grade, and he wrote well. He wrote well both in terms of grammar and the calligraphy. He had fantastic calligraphy,
Yeah.
both a bit like mine, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we take after.
Yeah.
So he had that. My mother had no education. She couldn't write other than basic words, but she could tell a story, and she liked to tell and, increase, embellish. She was a great storyteller.
Yeah. You picked quite a lot from both of your parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, your mom's family, they lived in a hamlet north of Lisbon, right?
Right.
And I understand that you spent some summers with your was it
Grandmothers.
grandmothers?
My grandmother and my
Yeah.
aunt. Yes, we actually many summers we would take off from Queluz
Yes.
and spend there, say,
Yeah.
2 months, sometimes more. By then, we were 3 kids,
Yes.
and my mother. My father would stay and work and visit us when he could.
Yeah.
So, yes, so I spent a great deal of time with my grandmother and the family, the other aunts and cousins, and those people, this hamlet of peasants, almost like the Middle Ages. Yeah. Portugal
yeah.
was like that
In
at
your
that time.
biography, you say, referring to your grandparents, their basic way of life and their ingenuity in face of hardship greatly influenced my vision of the world. What was to become your vision of the world?
You have to make it. You cannot really choose who you are. You cannot transform or change the larger context. But in as far as you are concerned, nothing, nobody rules but you. And you never stop, you never give up. You appreciate every little thing because you may need it one day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take a stone and see in it a world, use it. I remember an uncle of mine would pick up anything he saw in the streets, a bit of string, and he would roll it up, put it up on the wall, and maybe 5 years later he needed a bit of string, and there it was.
Yeah.
So you make the best, you don't complain, but you are aware, you know you are poor, and you have to work, but you also that if you are smart, you are okay. So
Yeah.
that's what I saw, and yeah, that's true. Looking back, I see that's them.
Yes. You've mentioned before that you went to primary school in the palace in Queluz. And in your biography, you also say that from an early age, I was conscious of its beauty and extravaganza, referring to the palace,
palace.
as compared to the poverty of everything else, to the ugliness, so to speak, of everything else.
Yes. But
So at this early age, you already could see the ugliness behind the beauty. You must have been what?
Well, I could see both. By then I went, so if I started school at 6 to 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. So those 4 years
Yeah,
there in the
yeah,
palace,
yeah.
right? So I grew up into them. But I had a notion of things. I was reading these papers and magazines
Yeah.
from my father. I knew of the war because I was born in 38, so the war was, there were pictures,
Yeah.
those years of the war. And I could read and see the beautiful people and the beautiful things and the ugly things in the paper. And I
Yeah.
guess I put it together. And you could not miss the small town with not everybody was poor, but there was poverty, and the
Yeah.
houses were modest,
Yeah.
and there was nothing. There were houses and streets, and there was it.
Yeah.
And then the palace,
Yeah.
this kind of pink jewel thing,
Yeah.
with all these rooms with gold. And you couldn't miss the disparity
Yeah.
and wonder what's going on. What's this,
Politically in Portugal, things were not that beautiful either.
No,
at that
exactly.
time. Tell me a little bit about how you and your family lived under the dictatorship of Salazar.
You couldn't see the effects directly on my family, really. They had their life and so, but the whole of it, the context in which we lived, let me see if I can. It was like a weight on everybody. It's like lead,
Uh-huh.
that fascism in everything, that those lies from those people, Salazar and these cohorts.
His entourage.
His entourage.
Yeah.
Because what they said, we could see it was lies. I mean, everything was hollow.
Yeah.
And we did not make sense to us.
Were your parents ever in trouble with the law? Because a lot of people.
My father had a bit of trouble because he spoke out of turn. He wasn't as careful, and he dealt with people, but nothing serious.
No, he never went to jail or anything.
No,
because a lot of
and
people
he never belonged to anything,
Yeah.
to like a party.
Yeah.
We're all owners.
Yeah.
We don't go for clubs, so we never.
Yeah.
We didn't have political trouble. No.
Okay. Let's talk a little. Sorry. Go ahead.
They weren't overtly political. I was. I became political.
You became.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about that
And
later.
that doesn't come from them.
Yeah. Your formal education was in Lisbon. You moved from a small town to the big town.
Very early on.
Yeah. And you took a commercial course. This going to Lisbon, this was a big deal for you, wasn't it?
It was a big deal. I was 10, maybe not even quite 10. And yeah, it was a splendorous, big town full of interesting things at every turn. And I would take the train from Queluz to the main station in Lisbon, the heart of downtown, and then walk through the old town to the school, which was, as I say, Calçada do Combro, old town. So, for a kid and then the mixing with people in the train and the streets, was...
What was the big lesson from this experience? What was your takeaway from all of this?
I mean, perhaps that you are a little nobody, a kid in a small little box. And suddenly you go to Lisbon, you go to school, and you learn your ways. You become this sophisticated, strong little nothing. And my parents would look at me with some kind of admiration that I was making it in the big world.
Yeah. Did you kind of learn to be, I guess you had to learn how to become more and more independent in Lisbon?
Yeah, you learn.
Because
yes, you
were
do
away
that.
From
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't wild or anything. I did try things, and I did get in trouble sometimes. But you know, when you come from poor, humble, you don't have a safety net. So you're careful.
Yeah.
You know where you put
Yeah.
your feet. So
You took an accounting course at the Commercial Institute in Lisbon, but these were evening studies. You worked, and then you
I
went to school at night.
I finished
Wow.
the course, the commercial course,
Yeah.
at before I wasn't 18. I got a job within a couple of weeks, answered an ad in the paper. There was a competition, lots of kids, I mean, young people like me and some not so young.
Yeah.
I got the job, and I was 18.
Yeah.
So I wanted to learn more. So, yeah, I worked 9 to 5 and then went
Yeah.
to the institute.
You're talking about your job as an office clerk for the
Yes,
government?
right.
Yeah, you were 18.
Yes.
Now, when I read this passage, I thought it was interesting. You were one of 4 women hired, the first ever among 20 or so older men. You and the other women must have caused quite a stir.
Well, the world was changing.
Yeah.
It's just that time when the world, after the war, the world was opening up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course they weren't all old, but some were.
Yeah.
Had been there for a long time,
Yeah.
and they wasn't all difficult or negative, but they were clashes. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we were perky and young and at a course
Yeah.
and started at a level where they had been for many years. And we had a different vision of the world. So it was an interesting clash. I liked those guys.
Yeah.
They had a lot of history and big, thick crust on them. But I could see how they would feel in a world where
Yeah.
they couldn't quite follow and didn't like these young, perky women coming and, being smart, taking jobs. So,
Surprise.
yeah, but they were good people, interesting people,
Yeah.
all different.
Yeah.
One of them, very
Yeah.
old guy, had been to the war, had lost his hearing because his job was carry one of those big bazookas, and
Yeah.
so they had good stories. They were good people.
Yeah. How was the pay? Women to this day, some women to this day still are paid less than men. How was the pay at the time? Was it
I
fairly
can't
decent?
quite remember, but for me and my family was good pay.
Okay.
And I have no remembers, no memory of it being lesser than the guys, really.
Yeah.
It might have been, I don't know. And everything was secret, was not like now. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily know how much the others made. And they had been there many years. So I can't speak to that. But
Yeah.
to me, at 18, to start having a check and a pension
Yeah.
and benefits.
This was good.
It was good.
Yeah. So you're having a fairly good life in Lisbon, in this job, and in 1965, you immigrate to Canada. Why immigrate when things were going so well for you?
Well, that part was going well, but Portugal was still the same. Salazar and all those guys were there, and
Yeah.
the war in the colonies, and all that hollow ideology drove me crazy. And the church and the poverty. I remember those speeches by Salazar and these guys on TV. And I mean, to this day, I have nightmares about that, the hollowness of that talk, the lying, the fantasy
Yeah, you got fed up.
So, I knew about the world out there,
Yeah.
and maybe a world where there was some kind of realistic vision of people.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see it.
So
That's
when
why
you came alone, obviously.
I came alone.
Yeah. You had some friends here?
I had one very good friend, Eduardo Fernandes,
Yes.
who had come a few years before,
Yeah.
or a few months, right?
Yeah.
And that was all. I didn't know anybody else.
Did you have a plan when you came to this country?
Yeah, I thought I would learn English, stay a couple of years, and
Oh,
then
really?
return. I thought I would go back after a few years. I
But
get back to my family, to my language.
Yeah. But you stayed.
I
Did you
stayed.
ever regret not going back after those 2 years?
If one could go back, I would reconsider. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I guess you
I
missed
mean,
your-
I've been so lucky in Canada,
Yeah.
but you lose a lot in terms of contact with those you love.
Your family, yeah.
You abandon your mother, your family. It goes to the heart of you.
Yeah.
The most essential in human life, those
Yeah.
contacts with language, culture, and family, the
family.
blood connection.
Yeah.
So I can't say I would do differently, but I would be more careful.
You stayed as we know. What exactly made you stay? I know lots of good things happened to you, but what exactly made you stay?
Good job, love,
found
family
love.
love,
Yeah.
and the pull of it, the Canada, the greatness of it, the land, the opportunities, the mix of people, the democracy, how things were rational and open and made sense. And compare that with Portugal,
Yeah.
I almost had no choice but stay.
Yeah. And that's good that you stayed. You went to school here, evening classes. You
Grade 13, I took grade
Yeah.
13, whatever I was needed, and to get my equivalence with my education from there.
Yeah.
I took a few courses at night, so I got that. And then, having a job and all that, I went to university.
Yes, you did. You went to the University of Toronto where you took a BA in sociology. Again, evening classes. You worked during the day, like you had done in Portugal. I guess you brought
Yeah,
that
I was
work
used to
ethic
it.
from
For
Portugal. But that must have been hard because here you had to learn the language, a different culture.
It was hard. I had to
Yeah.
apply myself.
How
You know,
hard
the
was it?
weeks. Well, weekends I would do the papers. I would study. And I was still struggling with English. I knew English.
Yeah.
I had, I don't know, 3 years
Yeah,
from Portugal, but at university level.
yeah,
And in my job, I had
Yeah.
to do reports and so
Yeah.
on. So I was still struggling. But I was young and strong. I was never sick. I was lucky. So I had that energy.
yeah,
And I knew that the more I advanced, the better would be.
yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah, you did speak about your job, and this was in 1965, I guess shortly after you arrived.
I can, yes.
You became a bank clerk at the Scotiabank.
For a few months.
Yeah. How did this happen?
Sorry, just a little aside.
Yeah.
I came to Toronto from Ottawa for the interview. And yesterday, I was walking on Queen Street, and I went by the very bank where I
it
started.
still there?
It's still there, still Bank
How
of
did
Nova
you get the
Scotia.
job?
I was walking. Perhaps the second day I was in Toronto, in Canada,
Yeah.
with that friend of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why I was there, but I know that I was walking and there was a little paper clerks wanted or personnel wanted, whatever it was. And I said, oh, I walked in, I talked with the manager
In
or
English? In
whoever.
English?
Yes,
So
I
your
knew
English was
enough.
manageable by
Yes, I had English, and
Okay.
I was already reading
Okay.
fiction novels. So yes, I spoke to her. She asked me to write a few things, a little test, and I started on the Monday following.
Yeah. Now,
I was hired.
Yeah, you didn't stay there long, as you said, because in between 65 and 71, you got a job at the Toronto Public Library. And I know, because I remember those times, you were very instrumental in increasing the number of books in the Portuguese language. This is the picture of you
Yes.
at this library.
Yeah.
And you were there for a number of years, eh? 6 years?
Yes, right.
6 years?
Yeah. I wasn't a librarian or anything, but because
Yeah.
of they needed. Many Portuguese were coming, immigrants. There were
Yes.
waves, as you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
of immigrants. And the library, the Toronto Public Library, wanted to have a collection of Portuguese literature for the incoming Portuguese community.
Yeah.
And I knew Portuguese, and I was a bookworm. I read from very early. I
That's
knew
right,
Portuguese
that's right.
literature, the authors, and I could almost speak. I was convinced I was great. So I could speak with authority, even about what I didn't know much about. So I was hired, and they they asked me to start ordering, collecting, buying a Portuguese collection. So
Yeah.
yes, I started it.
Yeah. So you gave it quite a bit of impetus. By the time you left, there were a lot of Portuguese language books in this library.
Yes, and today I understand it's a wonderful collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky to be sort of the start of it.
Well, the library was lucky to have you for sure, and the Portuguese community. You work with caring service agencies, delivering all kinds of services. Started in, I think, in 71. You between 71 and 75, you worked for Services for Working People, the Ontario Ministry of Labor. You were a counselor interpreter and then a manager. What kinds of services were...
So this was a storefront operation from the Ministry of Labor.
Yeah.
As I said before, waves of migrants were coming. The economy was blooming.
Yes.
People were coming who had never lived in a modern economy.
Yeah.
And city like Toronto. So they were aware, the government and the ministry, that was necessary to outreach these people who were not. People were working and maybe being not paid as they should or whatever problems they might have. And they didn't know where to go to the big office of the government.
Yeah.
So came this idea, Ministry of Labor, of a storefront operation.
Yes.
In the immigrant area, College and Spadina.
Yes.
And again, I was at the library. I saw an ad in the paper for a Portuguese interpreter. I applied, I was hired, and that's how I started.
Yeah.
The services were, the concept, very important.
Yes.
They understood. Robert McPhee was the man who put this together, this idea. They understood if we're going to reach these communities, these populations, we cannot be rigid. And therefore, they said, this office is open, we'll help in whatever way.
Yeah.
It's Ministry of Labor, but our counselors will do whatever. So people would come whatever problem. It could be a rent thing, it could be a fight with the neighbor, it could be that the guy didn't pay him for 2 weeks, it could be an accident, many work-related accidents.
So
and we did whatever we could.
You were helping them adapt to a new situation.
Exactly, learn.
You must have, you mentioned a few things there, you must have witnessed a lot of drama.
A lot of drama.
Yeah.
And somehow the need was so great. This was a small first floor office on Euclid.
It was a storefront, yeah.
Very simple, very almost modest. And I think we were 4 counselors. I was an interpreter for the counselors, but soon became a counselor myself.
Yeah.
Was trained, I learned. So whatever. So people came by the hundreds. I mean, the office was a small thing, packed with people sitting and standing down and up the stairs.
Yeah.
The need was enormous.
The need was big.
And whatever problem, it was terrific. Really, it was something terrific. Whatever the problem was, we would call, we would write, we would intercede, we would sometimes not be able to get it resolved, but usually we did. We did whatever. We would have then the support of Ministry of Labor if we needed to refer or to go further with legal advice or whatever.
Yeah, through this job, I guess you got to know a lot of communities, but specifically your Portuguese community.
The area was.
Yeah.
And wasn't designed in that way, I don't think. But it was the Portuguese area, and at that time, who was coming were Portuguese. Thousands of them.
Yeah.
So, and when something works, word of mouth runs wild. So everybody started telling the friend, oh, you have a problem, you go there, you go there. So I met Bill, and remember yet many of them. Perhaps, I don't know, I was going to say hundreds of thousands, might be exaggerated, but many Portuguese.
Oh, yeah. And you continued to know a lot of people through your, what I don't know, I consider it to be the jewel in the crown of your profession, which was 20 years with the Ontario Human Rights Commission. You were there from 1975 to 1995.
Right.
This was big. This was a big thing for you.
This was a big thing.
What were the main issues then? All kinds of problems.
All right, so there is in Ontario, jurisdiction Ontario, not federal, but provincial.
Yes.
Ontario, there is a human rights code.
Yeah.
That prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, and services, public services, government services, on the basis of race, ethnic origin, sex, and handicap at the time, and a few other things. So what we did was receive complaints of people who felt discriminated on these grounds. We investigated them. We worked out a settlement, a resolution where one was needed, or if we couldn't, because the parties couldn't agree, we moved on to a board of inquiry and then to the courts who could impose a settlement. So it was at a time where Canadian society was changing and many people, not Canadian people, were coming in to assure that remedy was there for who was hurt by discrimination, and at the same time to educate society and make us all move with the times and integrate.
For the last 10 years of your tenure with the commission, you were an investigator.
Well, I started as an investigator.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's how you
Okay.
started,
I thought it
from
was the other way around.
services, with my experience
Okay.
at services and my BA in sociology.
Yes, yes.
I got a job as a human rights officer,
Okay.
which is investigate. And from there, I progressed to different jobs,
Yeah.
up to being the regional manager,
Manager.
For Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Okay.
me.
So you were a busy person. Many cases that came to your attention. Any cases in particular, without obviously mentioning names? Any cases that
Yeah, that marked me
that
and
marked
were
you? Yeah.
important, really. I'll maybe talk to a couple of
Yeah.
them without great details. But for instance, as investigator, I had a case, investigative case, racial discrimination, a black woman nurse who had applied. That's usually how complaints go.
Yeah.
Who had applied, had not been hired, and she felt there was something wrong. She could never get a clear idea why not. There was need for nurses. She was well qualified. Anyway, I investigated that complaint, and in the process of that investigation, I established that she wasn't the only one who had been denied the job, and there was no reason to be denied. And that the personnel director of human resources, really was the barrier, to put it mildly. Mm-hmm. So that case, I couldn't get a settlement. The hospital at that time, this was the Toronto General Hospital. So, it's like a national institution.
Yeah.
They were very touched, discrimination, no, 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 no. And they would not settle the matter. So we went to a board of inquiry, and because what it was, it received great media coverage and became clear that there was a huge problem there.
Uh-huh.
So the board of inquiry imposed the settlement. That was resolved, and the hospital from there on changed, produced really major changes. And the human resources director disappeared from the map.
Yeah.
So that's great. It was one of the first race cases that made an impact.
Yeah. As we said, you were with the Human Rights Commission for 20 years. Now, and you saw a lot of cases. At the end of your tenure, did you feel accomplished or somewhat frustrated? Because sometimes we leave.
Let me just go back for a moment to the other two cases, just to, not just the race, but another case, sexual harassment. The investigation of complaints by 7 immigrant women in a factory that the foreman was abusing them sexually with conversations and touching and so on. That eventually went again to a board of inquiry. First sexual harassment case in Canada.
Really?
Received a lot of coverage. And now, in the time of Me Too movement, I'd like to think I started a little bit of that movement. With that thing. So history. Those two cases. Another case had to do with same-sex marriage. At the time, I was a manager. I did not investigate, and there wasn't much. But the question was, is it legal to deny marriage to people of the same sex?
Yeah.
And how does the code, the Human Rights Code, apply to that? Yeah. To make the story short, it went to court and eventually was resolved that the code applied, it was discriminatory, and today people of same sex are, of course, welcome to marry legally and so on. And there, as a manager, was not so much, it was to be able to withstand the pressure of the culture the cultural biases against that. You had to be firm and clear and make sure there were no mistakes that could cancel the whole thing. So, having given you these three examples, you can see there was a lot of terrific work, a lot of satisfaction.
You felt accomplished at the end. Is it fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like a gift from heaven. That's
Briefly, I wanted to say that other than this major job, you had part-time jobs, evening and weekends. You were a sales clerk with a pharmacy. You were an interpreter and ground hostess with CP Airlines.
Yeah, the time I had to, to have a bit more money. So I could go to Portugal, visit family, help them there. So I was a busy bee.
Now, in the community at large, you started to be somewhat active, as in activism.
Yes.
You were a member of the board of directors of the People and Law, a member and president of Working Women Community Center. You were a member, vice president of Legal Education and Action Fund.
LEAF, yes.
Yeah.
LEAF.
And of course, because of your love of books, you were also a member of the committee selecting the best book of the year.
For Toronto, the City of Toronto Book Committee.
That's right.
Yes.
In your community, and I say your community, meaning the Portuguese, even though you did cross to other communities, you didn't confine.
No, but I am Portuguese of culture.
Yes, of course.
It is my community.
I remember the days when you worked for the newspaper Jornal Comunidade,
right?
Community newspaper,
yes.
Silva magazine, and you were dealing with issues of the day pertaining to the Portuguese community as a writer.
Comunidade, more social working issues. Silva, we were attempting to build up some kind of Portuguese-Canadian culture.
Yeah.
So the issues are more literate, but yes.
You also worked for the Portuguese Interagency Network between 92 and 95.
Yeah, I was member of the board.
Yeah. This was one of first of its kind to deliver
it was
services to the Portuguese community.
To coordinate the work of agencies dealing with the Portuguese community.
Yeah. Now, I thought it was really funny when I spoke to you on the phone in preparation for this interview, and I said, Fernanda, what about awards? You have any? And you said, nothing significant. Not a popular person, you said.
In some circles. I mean, the kind of work I did
was not a popularity
it was
contest.
Activism. I was an activist. I wasn't like the director of a club or...
I know.
It was hard going. You don't make many friends. You make friends for life, the ones you make. Yeah. But it wasn't like a job of celebration, let me put it that way.
Hard work?
It was so...
And I bet you the big award was probably when somebody came to you, somebody who had helped in the past, and you didn't know if it had worked or not. And they come back and they say, thank you, that particular day, I needed your help.
Those prizes, I have
many. Those are the prizes,
Medals, cups, I have many. People who...
Very
even
good.
Today, and gifts that they would give me, and they would call me for some anniversary. Those I have all sorts of prizes.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, in 95, you retired from work, but from what I see, you did not retire from life. You entered a brave new world. These are your words when I spoke to you earlier. You've been doing some traveling. But this brave new world that I referred to has more to do with the artistic pursuits. All of a sudden, you retire, and there is an explosion of creativity.
I had the time. I didn't go to night school. I didn't work. I had time.
Okay, we've got
So
oil paintings, murals, artistic carpentry, experimentations in clay and leather. Wow.
curiosity, I suppose.
How did this come about? How did you discover these talents?
I always knew. I always
Oh, yeah?
did little things, but
Yeah.
now I had time and interest in whatever. So and I remember my people, the people I knew in the village or the people I knew in Calouge, carpenters who lived nearby. I saw them working, and then I started the little bench. And then did another one.
there's a little bench up
There's
there
the
that I
blue
love.
one there. That kind of, and it's really interesting work. And
Yeah.
Toronto, you pick the garbage. Sometimes people put furniture out,
Yeah.
good solid wood. That's where I got my
Yeah.
wood and work. And the same with the other arts. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it comes from my mother, who had.
Yeah.
I could see her. She did all the clothes for us. And she never just
She was a
did,
bit of a seamstress, was she not?
well, just for herself.
For herself.
Would work, yeah. But
Now, I left another artistic pursuit to the end because I've read some of your poems, and it's just an incredible array of topics and introspections and sensitivities. So poetry has become a major thing in your life.
yes, major interest.
Yeah.
So I always wrote a bit from very early age. And, with the newspapers, I wrote prose and articles, journalism, and so on.
Yeah.
And a bit of poetry just on the side, rarely. But I had an AVC, a stroke, some time ago. Not
Yeah.
serious,
Yeah.
but serious enough
Yeah.
that something happened, I don't know. Some people say your mind is cleared of all that junk that was obstructing it, and suddenly your brain thinks, creates, I don't know. Or else, you're going to die one of these days of heart stroke or something, and you want to leave some legacy of sorts. I don't know. I know that I started writing in a much more disciplined, concentrated, deeper way. And I have continued, and it's like opening a window over a huge scenery of life,
Yes.
of feelings, of emotions, and of the brain, how your brain works and contrives and imagines. Very, very good work. Very good.
When we talked about poetry earlier, you said that you consider this an exquisite gift at the end of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A gift to me from my brain or whatever.
It's therapy as well, isn't it?
Yes,
Somewhat?
yes, but it's also a, in a way, Bill, it's work.
Oh yes.
And obvious, I like work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a work that rewards. You are finding as you labor.
Yeah.
It's a work of labor, and then
Yeah.
you see something there together that came from you, and you don't quite know how.
Yeah. Now, as I said, there's a variety of themes. You write poems about the environment, about the human condition. It's a vast array of themes. What is the focus, would you say, Or is it a
I
little
don't
bit of
think
everything?
they have a focus. I write as they come. The poems come
Okay.
rather than my choosing them.
Yeah.
But for one little thing lately, this year, with the lockdown and so on,
Yeah.
somehow I have been writing on a subject as I never did before.
Which is?
Which is Portuguese slavery, Portuguese slave traffic.
Going back to the history there.
Going back to maybe human rights and to Portugal. And I'm writing, I have already, it's almost, and it's fairly long. So it's a book exclusively on that, and it's different. But short of that, I have responded to wherever. So it's a mix of, as you were saying.
Yeah. Now, I asked you to bring a poem to read at the end of our conversation. Unfortunately, you were getting to that part. Now, you brought one entitled The Courage of Roses. Why this poem?
Why I chose it?
Yeah.
I didn't want anything too heavy or too political, as I sometimes do, or either too simple and happy. So I'm not sure I settle on this
Go ahead.
one.
Let's hear it.
All right, I'll do my best. The Courage of Roses. Stanley Park Rose Garden. Quiet morning, nobody around. The rose is still scenting the air. Courage. Mother and daughter sitting very still, arms around each other. The child in the last stage of cancer. Mother dying too of sorrow. They lift their heads as they hear my steps. A smile starting to brighten their faces, hoping to be still counted as alive, longing for a nod, a friendly nod from rose lover to rose lover in their time of goodbyes. But I avert my eyes, cowed by the sight. Lightning should have struck me, burned my bones, leave the ashes for the roses. Thank you.
We're going to leave with that wonderful.
It was fun. It was a pleasure talking to you and to people out there.
And sharing with you, or you sharing with me, your wonderful life, which is a poem in itself.
Well, thank you to Canada and my friends.
Yeah.
And to life.
And to life. And hope to see you again soon.
Good luck to all.
And good luck to all of us, eh?
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you
bye.
again. Thank you again. And we say goodbye to our viewers. Until next time. Thank you.